NC State family, it's time for an honest look at your sports world. Let's get you hooked up for Pack Therapy, presented by First Horizon Bank. Here are your hosts, Tim Donnelly and Wolfpack football legend Mike Glennon.
Pack Therapy, the podcast, back here in studio. I'm Tim Donnelly, joined by my co-host, Wolfpack legend, longtime NFL quarterback Mike Glennon. It was another bye week for NC State this week, so we have quite a few things that we need to break down and what could they improve on. But before we get into all of that, please subscribe to this podcast everywhere podcasts can be found. YouTube, 99.9 The Fan on YouTube. There's a playlist there. Please subscribe to 99.9 The Fan. Like, share, and as always, if you have some questions that you want answered by Mike, you can leave them in the comments of this video on YouTube. Even if you listen to it elsewhere, go to YouTube, just find the most recent Pack Therapy video, comment your questions, comments, concerns, and there's a good chance you'll hear them next week on the pod. Also, I know this is a podcast, but in the radio business, we call this a tease. For basketball season, we have a pretty sweet surprise coming your way for Pack Therapy. So be ready for that. Not ready to announce it yet, but just know Pack Therapy during basketball season is something you want to pay attention for. So subscribe, keep it there, and those will pop up into your feed when they're time. Mike, this one we'll start with very simple. Georgia Tech is next up. They're coming off a bye. They are a physical team. The best way I think you can describe Georgia Tech is their head coach is a former offensive line coach. So their whole the whole team kind of takes upon the very special and unique feel that offensive linemen bring to the table. Is State ready for that kind of fist fight, right? Are they ready to get out there and lay it on the line?
I'll say NC State has struggled when a team has been physical and kind of brought the punch. Mm-hmm. Teams do tend to take the personality of their head coach, and being the former offensive lineman at Georgia Tech, seems like he's done a great job with that team and getting them back in the right direction. And they're coming off a huge win against Miami. You wonder if there couldn't be a little bit of a hangover, but absolutely, I think this is a game that NC State hasn't proven yet this year they can win in a physical kind of. They've beaten, I would say Cal is the only team that was also pretty physical that they won. Other than that, all the teams that have physical have kind of out-dominated NC State.
You can kind of catch Georgia Tech. By the way, they beat Miami bye week. They were number 4 in the country, I believe, when they knocked off Miami. Bye week. They have Georgia next week. So you are kind of – and this is not a compliment. You're kind of the trap game. You're the one that might get overlooked between two of the best teams in the country. So if you do out-physical them early – there's something there. I'm gonna do one of my big pet peeves here, right? It's like, there's an exception to every rule. You've done some color commentary. You've been the guy. One of my huge pet peeves is, right, kickoff happens, then the color commentator, they got the 40 seconds or whatever there to talk, and they go, why don't you go ahead and tell them some of the keys to the game? And they put up the graphic, and they're like, keys for this home team, whoever it is, it doesn't matter at all, is they have to win the turnover battle, and they have to start fast, and they have a graphic with 2 bullet points that say win the turnover battle and start fast. And I'm sitting there going, did they even know who was playing when they put these? Because that's this basketball game, the key to the game is put the ball in the hoop. Like, that's the entire game. It's not specific to anything. But occasionally there's an exception to the rule. I do think starting fast is wildly important for NC State coming out of the bye. For everything we just said, right? If you're ever going to be in a fist fight, you got to punch first, right? You have to be the one to land the first blow, and maybe you can catch Georgia Tech kind of in that lull between two big games.
Yeah, the reason why I don't know if Georgia Tech will have a hangover is because this is a primetime game on Thursday night. If this was a noon kickoff on a Saturday in a sleepy Atlanta town, that's one thing. I think the fans, the students, they're excited. I mean, they just came off beating the number 4 team in the country. They got Georgia next week. I don't think they're necessarily going to overlook it. I think they're probably going to ride the momentum. But yes, starting fast for NC State would be big to kind of set the tone and let them know we're going to bully the bully. You're not going to be the one dominating at the line of scrimmage. We're going to take it to you first. So
for hopefully the new listeners that are growing on this podcast every single week, tell your friends. Mike and I are cousins. So we go way back, and I'm going to tell a grandpa story quickly, which for anyone that knew our gramps, if you heard this story once, you heard it 700,000 times. But he used to talk about back in the schoolyard, right? Back in when he was a kid, they would literally, I didn't know this is where the phrase came from. They would put a chip on your shoulder, like a wood chip or whatever, on your shoulder, and if somebody was going to fight you, they would walk up and knock the chip off your shoulder. So his thing that he would tell us, right, because grandparents and grandfathers always go with the kind of like, this is how rough and tumble we were back in our day, is he always said, I always put the chip on my shoulder so they would come over and knock it off. And his justification for that was when they were reaching to knock the chip off, he could always land the first shot, right? Our grandpa, I don't even think he was that big of a fighter, so I don't know if this ever actually happened, but it was a story he told a whole bunch of times. If I'm state, I'm looking for, to use that as the analogy, I'm looking for an early vulnerable moment where you can land the first shot, which might be letting C.J. Bailey test him deep early, might be one of, the most often text sent between Mike and I during NC State games is when Tony Gibson fires a zero blitz, all out, engage 8 for my Madden fans on the first play of the game, and we just basically send a text saying, like, that guy's a psycho. I think this is the game where that makes sense. Try to land the first blow, try to find where Georgia Tech is vulnerable, and make sure you get that first punch landed, and then it can become the rocky drag-out game.
Would one of the key bullet points be better for you if it was set the tone?
Set the tone?
Set the tone? And no, same thing?
At least put a player, right? Say, like, this guy needs to set the tone. Give me something that shows you couldn't say this for every single game that you do color for.
Yeah, so I do think that taking C.J. Bailey, having him take a few shots would be great. I think it is the aggressive mindset. I think if you're Dave Doran, you're showing clips from the Stanford game to that offensive line saying this is what happens when we control the line of scrimmage, and you kind of look at the Duke game and know that they did not control the line of scrimmage. So it's finding a way to light a fire in the belly of those offensive linemen, get them going. But I like your thought of getting the receivers involved, take some shots early in this game to set the tone.
There it is. Casey Concepcion, we've used, if you go back to weekly podcast, we've used like a percentage of our podcast time. Probably the number one thing, maybe outside of the quarterbacks, has been Casey Concepcion's role in the offense. Is it time to stop spending so much effort, whether it's us on the pod or them in the game plan, in talking about how to get Casey the ball?
Absolutely. I think that's what we've seen really after the first quarter of the season or so. I feel like the past 4+ games, it doesn't feel like they're designing plays for him anymore. If it happens organically, then he gets the ball. If not, then we're going to keep getting the ball to Justin Jolie and Wesley Grimes and Noah Rogers and whoever else is open. And Hollywood Smothers has stepped in since that time as well and played a significant role in this offense. So, yes, I think we are no longer having that box on the call sheet for KC. If he gets the ball, great, because he still is probably the best playmaker on the team. It's just there's no need to force it and just let it happen.
All right, so let's not spend our time there. Let's go back to the other number one time spender, which is the quarterback. C.J. Bailey, when a freshman, a rookie quarterback in the NFL, a freshman point guard, you're going to go 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 3 steps back, and it's not going to be linear. Took a step back for the first time in a while against Duke. The stats show it. The lack of completion show it, although there were some drops that didn't help. Bye week is a good time for a quarterback to take a breath, self-scout a little bit, look at what you need to improve on. What was the number one thing for him on the to-do list?
I think it is probably just kind of reset that brain and that feeling of he looked a little overwhelmed on against Duke, and I think he's now going to be a week and a half removed from that. Those kind of thoughts and that anxiety maybe that was created against Duke, it gives it time to kind of get it out of his system. So for the coaching staff, for him, it's just kind of getting back to the fundamentals and learning from the Duke game, taking from what they did against him, and that might be whether it's working in the pocket, getting his feet a little quieter. They're a little They weren't quite as smooth as it's been in the past, and getting his eyes right. I think that was the biggest thing, was his eyes were a little off. Duke threw a lot at him, and he looked confused. So between his eyes and his feet, that'll tie everything together, and that's what I would be focused on if I was a quarterback coach.
I want to kind of play an abstract game here. You're starting to get to the point, and I, first of all, do not enjoy this of college football, but you are starting to get to the point where you're looking towards next year and assembling your roster already. I'm sure most, if not all, FBS programs have some kind of director of college scouting who's looking for who might be going into the portal, and you're looking towards the future. We know last year so much of the fundraising was keep Casey Concepcion around, hit the transfer portal. This year, I think there's maybe more options on who do you prioritize bringing back. So the exercise is this. After I think it was the UNC game last year, Dave Doran made the call. He said if 5,000 fans give $1,000 each, right, the collective will be well funded. If 5,000 fans give $1,000 each, that's $5 million. Whatever the money is, that's what the money is. However much you raise, that's how much you raise. But then you have to allot it, right? You have to kind of spend to keep this guy 30%, 40%. It's not a salary cap, but you can't spend money you don't have, so it's kind of similar. Justin Jolie, Casey Concepcion, Noah Rogers, Hollywood Smothers, Dakari Collins, the highly talked about freshmen, Anderson, Keenan Jackson, Paylor, who have had varying roles. And we're just talking kind of the fantasy football positions here. We know C.J. Bailey is priority number one. That's where you're going to have to spend if that's what he wants to stick around. How do you divide up kind of the rest of your salary cap? Who are priorities number 1, 2, and 3 for this is what our offense needs to be good next year?
This is a fascinating new role that's going to be coming in college football. And, hearing you say director of college scouting sounds like an NFL term to me. But in the NFL, they also have a salary cap guy, and he kind of works hand in hand with the GM.
Jennifer Gardner in draft day.
To talk about how they want to allocate their money. And honestly, that's going to be one of the most important jobs on the entire staff is who that person is and how they go about
Agent's going to say it's 150 and we'll commit right now, and they're going to have to look to their salary cap person and say, can we afford that? Can we make it happen? And that's an unusual deal in college.
Yeah, and I think C.J. Bailey is number one.
Yep.
Number two, I think it's got to be Justin Jolie and honestly I would say the rest of the playmakers over KC. Like, I would rather see them retain Noah Rogers, Wesley Grimes,
because you're taking Jolie, price into account here,
right?
Yeah.
Than I would for KC to get the bigger amount, and then they lose those guys as well. I don't know. This is who knows what goes into all this. If these guys want to stay, if they want to leave, if they're getting offered other places, it's not going to be whoever gets that job. That's not going to be an easy job either. But I think I'll also say this. I think they need to get some more offensive linemen too. Mm-hmm. They're losing Anthony Belton. The guards haven't been great. Like we talked about, there's been not much run game outside of that Stanford game, so they got to get offensive line. They hit on the skill positions last year on offense. That was definitely I would say the best thing that they did was bring in all those guys. Defensively, they brought in some guys. Wouldn't say they really moved the needle much, but those offensive skill positions they brought in all proved well. So I think it starts with C.J. Bailey, then it's going down those playmakers and getting some offensive line, and then you got to save some for the defense as well.
The hardest part, I believe, is going to be understanding the market, right? Because in the NFL, it's all public. Like if the Panthers want to pay J.C. Horn, they can go look at what the corner just got from San Francisco, or what Patrick Surtain, or whatever it is. You can kind of see where the market is. In college, I don't think you know how much some of these guys are making.
I don't think you know, and the reason I don't understand this director of college scouting is there are so many college players. Like, how do you even know who might be interested in leaving? Where in the NFL, at least, like, which players are about to be free agents.
I've talked with coaches about this, so I can give. I was actually talking with Manny Diaz about it not long ago, head coach of Duke, on my afternoon show. There's some AI learning of it where they subscribe to systems or software that tags things, players with certain analytics that you're looking for as soon as they hit the portal. And then obviously you have to go do your work, but there can't be somebody who's watched every game across the country for, the one guy who made 3 injury replacement starts in November in the I almost said the Pac-12 as an example, doesn't even exist in the Big 12. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on.
And the other thing, I think we briefly brought it up in the past, but how the NCAA is in front of something in D.C. I don't know if it's Congress or House or whatever, where they're talking about giving $20.5 million to the players, and I think
revenue share. Yep.
Like 75% of that can go towards one sport.
Football.
Which would be football. So, I mean, there's potentially $15 million. Mm-hmm. And then I hope that there is a way to regulate it. And then how do you divide that up?
Right. How do you divide that up? Who we see in the NFL, again, was quarterback getting 35, 40% of the cap? 35, 40% of $15 million towards one guy. A lot of gosh darn money. We talked about defense. I just want to bring this up real quick. Did you see Peyton Wilson's interception for the Steelers?
That was unreal.
I had 2 thoughts. First, I'll say mine, then you can go into how crazy it was. My first thought was his medicals evaluations at the combine, it must have been red flag after red flag for that guy to fall to the third, because as crazy as that was, part of me went, yeah, that makes sense. Like I saw it for a long time at NC State. He is that good. And then my second thought was, makes a little sense that NC State's defense took a big step back without that guy doing that at the NFL level, which, by the way, he's, 23, 24 years old. Like, he was that. It's not like he got a lot better between last year and this year physically. He's unreal, and I think that, you take that off of a defense, they're going to take a step back.
I thought you were going to say your first thought was Lamar Jackson's your fantasy quarterback. And
wasn't the best. I'd already lost my matchup.
Great catch. I mean, that was a, one of those
game-winning play.
It was, kind of, I think NC State fans, obviously ACC fans, and maybe some national college football fans knew who Peyton Wilson was. That was the type of play where now the whole country, that was watching that game, which was kind of the primetime game. Well, I guess the Bills were playing as well. But a lot of people are
some people would call that the Chiefs were playing as well.
Right. know who Peyton Wilson is, because I saw it on SportsCenter all the next day, and it was really cool to see.
Actually, I had 3 thoughts, and this will be the last one before we take a break. Then we get to a lot of your questions. My third thought was, that is a hideous jersey number. 41 is horrendous. That guy needs to be in a single digit out there, or 11 looked fantastic.
Yeah, but Steelers, usually their linebackers wear 90s numbers.
That's fine. 90, that's got some swag. 41 was you can't be that athletic and wearing 41. That is a fullback number. No disrespect to fullbacks. We'll take a break. When we come back, questions from you all. We picked out the best, and we'll bring them to Mike. That's coming up next. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back into Pack Therapy, the podcast. Tim Donnelly here alongside Pack legend Mike Glennon. And as always, second part of this pod is driven by you. You can head to our YouTube comments right now and ask questions. Anything you want of Mike. You can wait until game time. State playing Georgia Tech this weekend. During the game, after the game, just head to this video on YouTube. It'll be the most recent in the Pack Therapy playlist on 99.9 The Fans YouTube. And if you comment there with questions, there's a good chance you'll hear them right here on the pod. We'll start with the overarching theme. And I have to be honest, there weren't many questions attached to this. There's just a growing, unsatisfying flavor of all the comments about Dave Doeren. I picked out a few just to prove that I'm not making it up. From Redfisher5378, Dave has a losing record in conference, no championship appearances. If we want more of the same, he needs to stay. This program is heading south. He seems uninterested. At Awakened Soul 33, the only people who enjoy bowl games are people who enjoy being mediocre. SMH. P.S. How many offensive coordinators do we have to go through to realize that maybe, just maybe, Dave Doeren is the problem? There was a lot more of that flavor, but because that one had a question at the end that said maybe, just maybe, how long will it take us to realize that Dave Doeren is the problem? That's the one I'll send your way.
Look, I mean, what happened in the bye week all of a sudden that this is
I said that to you off air. People say you can't lose a bye week. Somehow Dave Doeren must have, because or just time to stew, time to rattle your thoughts off the wall. Certain fans became more vocally upset with the coaching staff during the bye week. Probably a vocal minority, because that's how it always is, right? If you're willing to comment, if you're willing to send a question into a podcast, you're probably a particular type of fan. But there's no doubt it is a growing sentiment.
Yeah, look, I mean, we talked about this last week. I think there's no question that Dave has raised the bar at NC State. It's just, has it kind of reached his ceiling? And is that a Dave Doeren thing, or is that maybe an NC State thing? I mean, just from a financial standpoint, we don't have the same amount of money that some of these other schools have, particularly the SEC and Big Ten. I mean, in the ACC, we're not on the same level as Clemson and Florida State. And so I don't know the answer to it. He's been here a long time. He's done a lot of good things, but no, he hasn't gotten over the hump. And that's what I want as a fan too. I want to experience what I got to experience last year with the men's basketball team, is have that moment of going on that run will be something I remember for the rest of my life. And NC State football just hasn't had that moment under Dave, and they haven't had it really under any coach. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I would love for it to be Dave that gets it over the hump, because he's a good guy and he represents the program well. But I think it's also fair to understand where the fans are, some fans are coming from, and why they would want to see someone else.
You bring up a perfect segue to our next question. At Lamello Balencesto 7, Duke is a win against Virginia Tech, a win against Wake Forest, and a bowl game win away from a 10-win season. They're sitting at 7-3 right now. That was me just explaining. Lamello then goes on to ask, the Pac hasn't done that since Phillip Rivers. Catalyst for big change, which is a different way to ask kind of the same conversation we were having. But Manny Diaz in his first year has a legitimate shot at 10 wins. Granted, that's assumed, like, they're not favored against Virginia Tech this weekend, so it's not an assumption or a guarantee. But does, you brought up that maybe the reason people on the bye week got more upset with Dave Doeren is because UNC won. Like, does what's happening elsewhere in the triangle and maybe success or a win streak happening elsewhere impact the way you think NC State should move?
No, I don't think it should impact it, but I think that's normal for the fans to feel that way. I mean, when you see UNC winning, when you see Duke, who I think we don't have the same rivalry with,
it's just proximity. It's just you
right. It's close,
like,
but I think most people think of Duke as a basketball school, and it's like, when their football program is better than ours, then that's an issue. And they're getting 10 wins in year one with their coach, and our coach has been here for as long as he had, and he hasn't done it once. That's an issue. So I do understand.
And you just took one of their best players in the transfer portal over to your squad. Like, there is an expectation that you're going to be a level above.
Right, and I think it's a little premature to say Duke's going to get 10 wins. I mean, NC State had an opportunity to go to the bowl game and get their 10th win last year, which, as we talked about a number of times, bowl wins don't matter like they do anymore. I mean, they were without Peyton Wilson. The bowl game feels like whoever has the most opt-outs, the other team's going to win. And so there's like an asterisk.
Quarterback opt-out, or if your coordinator leaves, take a head coaching job. There's so many other.
So Duke
other
may
things.
get 10 wins, but they may play a team that their coaching staff has left, their quarterback's opting out.
If you could be so fortunate.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, take it with a grain of salt if that were to happen. But I do understand that sentiment from the fans of why that is frustrating when you're seeing, Carolina's getting things going now, and Duke's obviously having a great season.
Again, you are segueing perfectly into our next comment here. At Jackson Young 23, you brought up that bowl games don't matter the way they used to. Why not bench your seniors? The season is lost.
I will say, like, what kind of drives me crazy about these guys opting out of the bowl game, like, I get it. Injuries happen. You're getting ready for the NFL draft, whatever. But at what point is it like, I'm going to opt out? How is it any different than playing now with 2 games left as it is with 1 game? Like, at what point does that just stop? And
an injury in the last regular season game doesn't hurt as much as an injury in the bowl game?
Yeah. It just – I just don't like that guys are doing that. I get it, but it just – doesn't feel right. So, no, I don't think we should bench the seniors. There's still something to play for. And especially with the landscape now, you have no idea who's going to be on your roster next year. So playing the young guys may not do you any good.
Maybe their audition for somewhere else.
To me, you put the best 11 guys out there on the field and see what happens.
And I'll just add this. The overwhelming majority of college football players, college football is where their career ends, and they don't have a ton of options. They don't have $100,000 being offered in the portal. They don't have the NFL waiting. You don't bench the seniors because you care about the seniors. You don't bench the seniors because Dave Doran and this senior class have been through some things, and you really like and care and want them to have a good end of their career. You don't want it to end with, hey, we're going to start you, but then actually I'll even use this. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I'll use this as an example. I had been benched my senior year before senior game. Head coach came up to me, still a hard worker, still team respected me, said, hey, we're going to start you. And I was like, heck yeah, I'm getting the start. He goes, well, we'll run 2 or 3 plays and you're going to come out. And I went, no, that's what's not going to happen. Because, you don't want anything ceremonial. You don't want to not be a future of the program. Like either I'm good enough or I'm not. If a senior is good enough, you play them because you want their career to end on a better note than mine did. You want to end with them putting something they're proud of on the field.
Yeah, and I think if there is a underclassman, say there's a senior that's starting right now and maybe he's struggling a little, and there's an underclassman that you think may give the team a better chance, that's perfectly fine with me.
That's fair. But
no, I don't.
That's not what happened with me, though, Mike. I was way better. I don't know why you would bring that up. But no, that if you truly believe that as a coach, that's part of being a coach is making those hard decisions. Another question here. We referenced this earlier. Would a teammate notice? This comes from Pack Nation with a whole bunch of zeros. Would a teammate notice and or care that Concepcion's little brother decommitted? Which, for those of you that aren't familiar, I think it's Arian Concepcion. He goes by Nunu Concepcion, a high school wide receiver, little brother of KC. Had been committed to state for a while now, decommitted over the weekend, opened up his recruiting, and there was quite a bit of inferring going on in Pac Nation about, that means KC's gone. He would have stayed committed if KC was staying, and on and on and on and on.
Absolutely. I think the guys, with social media nowadays, it's impossible not to know. But, I don't know what the dynamics in the locker room are like. I imagine there's already whispers of who's planning on staying or going. Like, people aren't keeping their mouths shut completely on this stuff. I'm sure there's rumblings. Guys talk.
I was offered this.
What are you thinking for next year?
Can you talk to your agent for me?
Probably a good sense in that locker room of a couple guys that are probably planning to leave, and there's probably a bunch that they don't know. But I imagine at this point in the season, people are starting to have those conversations, and it's word spreading within the locker room.
I don't know if he has a little brother, so I'm just going to paint this hypothetical for you. TJ Graham, right? One of your number one targets when you were at state, has a little brother. We'll call him DJ Graham. Committed to state. This point in the season, TJ Graham has another year of eligibility, so you're expecting him to be around. His little brother decommits. Do you go talk to him, or do you respect family decisions? Do you, like, next time you're in the weight room, are you like, hey, what's up, Tej? So what's going on with Deej? What's going on with the younger one? Like, do you approach it, or is it?
I would hope as a quarterback you have a good enough relationship to go talk to him, and I think that's what you see in the NFL is the whole business decision. There's guys in the NFL that are going to do what's best for themselves, and that may be leaving, and I think people respect that, and it's expected. And I imagine with KC, it's somewhat similar. Like, hey, if someone's going to pay you a bunch of more money and you think it gives you a better opportunity to get the NFL, like, it's hard to argue against you doing that. I would love for you to stay, but, you got to do what you feel is best. And I imagine, CJ Bailey, whoever is, they're probably having a little conversations, whether it's at lunch or whatever, like, hey, man, what are you thinking of doing next year? I think that's just there's a human nature side of it as well.
There's more questions there, but we're not going to get to them because that just sparked a conversation for me. So you may not believe this, bit of a sports nerd. So I've been paying attention, trying to get ready for college basketball to a lot of podcasts and things like that. And 2 times recently, players. One was Jason Tatum and one was Carmelo Anthony. So one with Coach K, one with Jim Boeheim. Talked about how they're both one-and-done players, and they loved their college experience so much that there was actually a point where they were considering coming back. Now, I think they both ended up the 3rd overall pick, which obviously means money and riches, and they've gone on to great NBA careers. Jason Tatum's still in the middle of his. And Coach K and Jim Boeheim basically looked at them and said, like, what the heck are you – you like the frat parties? Like, get the heck out of here. Go make your money. You've done everything you can do in college. You've proven everything you can do, especially Carmelo with the national championship. And they very much appreciated that. Do you think it ever gets to the point where a coach is like, hey, listen, man, our NIL is $5 million. Schools want you whose NIL is $40 million. Love what you did for me, but you got to look out for your family. Like, does it get to the point where it might not even be forcing those guys to the NFL or to the NBA? It's instead forcing them to, like, man, you averaged 25 here. Man, you just became a $1.6 million player. Go change your life.
That's exactly what happened at Wake Forest with Dave Clawson and Sam Hartman. I think Dave Clawson was like, look, Sam, like,
if the numbers I'm hearing are true.
Right. We can't do what they're doing. That is life-changing money for you. Go ahead and do it. I think Sam Hartman is the perfect case of why you want to do that. Right now he's on the practice squad for the Commanders. He was making more money at Notre Dame probably by 4 times than he is as the practice squad quarterback at the Commanders. Now, I don't know if KC that's a complete apples-to-apples comparison because I don't know.
I wasn't putting that. I'm just like big picture stuff.
Right. I think there are going to be cases of definitely that. That's what I think at the kind of group of 5. Like, look, I appreciate your time here. You helped us for the time being. Now you got to go on to bigger and better things, just like those coaches do. I mean, a group of 5 coach isn't going to turn down a Power 4 job. Like, it's part of the decision of what's best for you and your family.
You're much better than I am at saying Power 4 the first time. I say Power 5 every single time. Last thing here before we go, and I know this is a long pod, but bye weeks, there's time to stretch our legs. Just because this came in on Twitter while we were recording this. I don't know if you've seen the news. Adam Schefter tweeted out that Ray Lewis has emerged as a lead candidate to be the next head coach at Florida Atlantic, building off of obviously the Deion Sanders phenomena. So my first little like, hey, I'm going to try to get some interaction here on Twitter was to say, who hires this guy to run a college program next? And it's a picture of Phillip Rivers with, fame check, personality check, nose ball check, like a whole bunch of stuff there. The first comment we got just from the appropriately named on Twitter, Unhinged Pack Fan, said, we're not advocating for Dave Dorn to lose his job. I don't do that. But the fan says, when State hires him, I hope you find a new co-host for Pack Therapy because Mike will become OC. It doesn't sound like a fun position to be the OC under Phillip Rivers.
Well, that's what Phillip Rivers, as you say, sounds great.
He's running a high school program. You could bring Gunner with him. His son is a top 30 quarterback.
And maybe he has aspirations to do this. He's got, 10 kids? Probably
I think it might be 11 now.
7 of them are still living at home. He made a boatload of money in the NFL. I don't know if this would be on his radar. Deion's kids were a little bit older. But, yes, I could see there's the parallel with Deion got to coach his son as a quarterback. Phillip could potentially coach his son as a quarterback. He may not want that pressure on his son to go to the same school where he's looking up every day and seeing his own name hanging in the rafters, and basically everywhere you go around NC State, you see Phillip Rivers. Sounds good in theory. I would be very surprised if that were to come to fruition. Your
kids, they're getting older every day. There's a birthday coming up this weekend. Once they do get older, are we looking at offensive coordinator drawing them up in the dirt?
I would never completely say no. I think I would enjoy coaching, but for the time being, that time commitment and what these coaches are dealing with the NIL and portal, exactly what we're talking about. So
you're just going to go straight to the league then? I mean, you don't want to deal with 18-year-olds asking for money. You'll deal with 26-year-olds asking for money. That's it for Pack Therapy this week. Again, leave your comments if you have any during the Georgia Tech game, after the Georgia Tech game. Come back, YouTube comments, leave questions. We'll answer them next week. Until then, have a great week, everybody.